do you feel that we are in kind of a, a racial dark ages that will change? Because, like you said, from the moment we're born, you're stamped. But you also said earlier that there's so many biracial kids out there now, and there's just going to be more and more as time goes on. That racial homogeny it's going to be very difficult to maintain. Do you think that like you said, there's going to be some point where they can't keep that narrative going? Do you think that's when we'll hit that exit from the racial dark ages?
I mean, I don't know. I can't really predict that, right? I don't know how long it's going to take. It really depends on so many different factors, and I think that the future is very uncertain because of the way this context operates. For instance, like the more blood is spilled, the more active people get, right? And so when blood is not being spilled in front of people's faces anyway, then people kind of recede. That ebb and flow of fighting against racism and feeling interested in it or inspired to do something about it, right? That ebb and flow, I don't think that can sustain itself for the future. So it really kind of depends on when that changes. And it's related to the work that I'm doing, right? I'm trying to end that by getting people to decide to take it on full time for themselves, not for anyone else, but for themselves as a value. If we can get enough people to do that, then the ebb and flow will lessen, kind of the oscillating curve, right? It'll thin out. And that's what we need in order to gather enough power to fight back against, this generational issue. In terms of how long it will take, I think that it depends on everybody. I can't predict such a thing, unfortunately, but I hope sooner rather than later. I hope that my efforts push the needle. That's all. That's really all I can hope for. But it's not up to me. It's really up to racialized white people. In general, racialized white people can end racism tomorrow as a group. And so ultimately putting enough people to the choice and getting them to think about it and make a choice and decide and act on that decision, it's just to see how long that takes. I think that it's an uphill battle. Obviously, it's been generations. Like, it's not like this is like new or that I'm the first person to think of doing anything like this. It was literally Dr. King's strategy, right, to show them getting hosed down, to show them getting dogs sicked on them, to show the inhumanity of racism and white supremacy and what's required for its maintenance. And even before that, it was people, especially racialized white people, seeing slave coffles, lines and lines and lines of wounded and pregnant women and, just butchered and beaten, starved slaves traveling over rough terrain for miles and miles to a plantation, chained at the neck, chained at the waist, chained at the ankles, chained at the wrists, and just walking. Sometimes they'd have to go through towns and people would see that. And it would shock their conscience. It was an undeniable thing, just like George Floyd having his neck kneeled on, sputtering and crying for his mother before, having life choked out of him while people are begging for the person not to kill him. And he's smiling ear to ear. Like these, we have these moments, where the true nature emerges, but we can't wait for those anymore. Hopefully my work and other people's work who are doing the same thing is going to inspire people to realize that and to decide that despite them only being, an average white person or whatever they consider themselves as, that they will feel empowered to do something and really feel empowered that that thing that they're doing is enough, because it is. Any individual act of anti-racism, including just having a conversation, you're already doing something revolutionary and radical, because it's not normal. It's not typical. It's not usual. And it's something that can only be inspired through one's values in this iteration of the world. So, I don't know. I can't time it out, but ultimately, I think that I'm onto something. And I think that several other people I've encountered who have race conversation shows and who there's a big media personality who left his big job, not personality, but like a VP, in media, a big media corporation. And he's leaving that to do conversations on race full time, because he realized he's a racialized black man. He has a daughter, and he realized that when one of these awakening events that I mentioned happened, and he was talking to his daughter about it because she questioned him, and he realized that he was having the same conversation with his daughter that his parents had with him about race. And in experiencing that deja vu, going back to the Matrix reference here, right? Because that's what broke him out, right? He was like, experienced that deja vu, and he was like, oh, wow, like, this can't continue, and if I don't do something, it will continue. Because look, it's been 40 years, since I had this conversation. Now I'm having it with my daughter. It's role reversal. He's like, this cannot stand, Similarly, I had a woman on the show who was in a master's program, found the show from being tasked through, I think it was a sociology class, that she was tasked to investigate some kind of a social issue or problem. And she chose race, and she found me through that, got on the show. And she was mentioning having a conversation. She's a racialized white woman, and this is when she was younger. And she's having a conversation with one of her black friends, and race comes up, and she ends up mentioning like what someone would have to say or do to be racist. And she gives like a qualifier about that, right? An hour later, she's talking to the same friend, and she literally says the thing that she an hour before said only somebody who is racist would say this. And she ends up saying it herself with unknowingly, like, and she heard it, like when she said it, she heard it, but then she did it without realizing it. And when she heard herself, she was like, oh, like, well, now this is like something I can't ignore, and she had to choose in that moment, right? She could have ignored it, which a lot of people probably do, or make excuses for it, right? And try and wave it off and pretend like, it wasn't what it was. But she didn't do that. She faced it. She acknowledged what she did. She acknowledged what it meant, and she said, I want to change. And so she decided to do that. And again, that is the process everybody needs to go through. They got to be faced with that moment, and they got to be faced with the question, and they got to answer it. And then they got to practice living by that. And that's the next phase of this struggle. It's the only way that the racial toxicity that exists right now in our environment will ever recede. There's no other way. So, yeah, that's why I'm so hell-bent on it. That's why I was like a dog with a bone. And that's why I'm so insistent. And that's why I tried to invite my friends and my family and my colleagues to join me in having the conversation, because not because I want to like push anti-racism on anyone or like, preach to people like, I'm a pastor in front of a pulpit. I want to, I just want to express to people what I've chosen and why, right? Like, I went through the same thing myself, right? I had to evolve. I had to gain a level of consciousness about this subject matter. I had to experience all of these suppressions and oppressions that came from various people of all racialized groups, all working for the benefit of white supremacy, all working against my success and against my flourishing. And yeah, you were talking about like, what's the minimum you can do? Like, but for me, the possibilities of what I can do, I feel like are endless. I feel like they're infinite with what I've learned. I feel like with the experience and the knowledge that I have, I could probably do a lot. And so that is exactly what I'm doing. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.